Well, hello everyone, and welcome to our online program on addiction and recovery from the Sunshine Coast Health Center up here in Powell River, BC. And our topic is on views of addiction from anthropology, which is a little different than what most people understand. Anthropology puts a focus on sort of the context of addiction. What was the country that someone grew up in? What was the culture? How did society make sense of addiction? Were there political influences? All under the argument that these are really the driving forces for any human being. And in 2009, McGill University held a big addiction conference focused on this kind of thinking. And one of the research participants presented this study which pointed out that basically our clients, people in recovery and people in active addiction, they make sense of their struggles based on their own personal experiences. A lot of addiction counselors have this idea that what we have to do for our clients is help them understand what an addiction is and then give them tools on how to overcome this addiction. All very scientific with the just assumption that the client will buy into it. Well, this researcher, Dr. Garcia, she pointed out that maybe that's not really what's going on. And she gives this example of a woman by the name of Alma. And Alma is a heroin addict, and she comes from a community which has the highest per capita heroin overdose in the world. So this community of about 30,000 people, and in fact it's so common that the community even has a saying which is heroin will cure everything. So this idea that heroin is like a common part of it, because the community has suffered for generations from poverty, feeling they don't really fit in, things like that. And so heroin comes in as part of the solution to this. Anyway, Alma's life is really quite interesting because she actually interprets treatment for addiction as part of her addiction, as weird as that may sound to you. Because she talks about her life as, well, you know, I used heroin when I was young, and then, well, I would overdose and end up in the hospital, and they'd send me over to treatment, and I'd maybe detox and do that, but then I'd get out, and then I would go back to using heroin. Or maybe I would use heroin, then I'd get arrested, and then the courts would send me to treatment, and then I would get out of there, and then I'd relapse again. And so really what was happening was that treatment was not a way of alleviating the problem. It was actually just one more component to the problem. And even another researcher at the McGill conference talked about gambling addiction and gave an example of a woman living in Las Vegas. And apparently in Las Vegas, there are gambling machines everywhere. And just for your own information, gambling machines are the most common form of gambling. So it doesn't really matter where you go to in Vegas. You can go to the grocery store, you can go to the 7-Eleven, you can go to the gas station. Everybody's got gambling machines. And this one person that the researcher dealt with was describing her life, and she actually got her to draw it. And it was a fascinating circle because she would point out, well, here's the casino, and here's another casino. But then here's the 7-Eleven, and it's got all sorts of machines in there. And here's a grocery store I go to, and it's got all sorts of machines. Oh, and here's the clinic I go to get over the gambling, and here's the 12-step program, Gamblers Anonymous, but then draws the path back to the casinos, and that's her life. She's gambling, but she's going to the clinic. She's still gambling all the time. She's going to GA, Gamblers Anonymous, but she's still gambling, and that's her life. And when you look at this picture, there's no exit point. It's just, again, gambling treatment is simply part of what it means to be a gambler for this woman. So it's kind of interesting, right? It's not unusual. And if you've known clients, for example, who've been in and out of treatment for years, you know that treatment simply becomes one more component to the addiction. So a real life example from anthropology that rather than the counselor coming in and saying, look at here is something different for you to do, here's a way out, a lot of clients actually interpret the treatment as a component of the addiction. Yeah, interesting things to think about. And we'll be back next time with another topic on our anthropological views of addiction.